In the closing days of March 1945, the Allied push into German territory begins to lose momentum. Over at Supreme Headquarters, Montgomery submits yet another requisition. He's asking for additional ammunition, extra fuel, and more time to get ready for the upcoming phase. Eisenhower sits reviewing this request when a staff officer walks in carrying a report from Third Army. The report contains information so remarkable that Eisenhower demands it be confirmed. Within an hour, the verification comes through. George Patton has taken 100,000 German soldiers prisoner in just one campaign. That's 100,000 more captives than entire Allied armies have managed to capture during months of continuous combat. He didn't bother waiting for authorization. He didn't sit around waiting for supply deliveries. He didn't bother coordinating with neighboring units or submitting elaborate operational plans for higher-up approval. He simply moved with such speed that the Germans couldn't keep up. By the time they grasped what was unfolding, entire German armies found themselves encircled and laying down their arms. Eisenhower puts the report down and makes a statement that his staff will carry with them for the rest of their days. While Montgomery was tallying ammunition, Patton bagged an entire army. Today, we're diving into what transpired when the calculated approach collided with unstoppable forward momentum, and why those 100,000 German prisoners demonstrated that velocity determines victory in warfare. By March 1945, the difference between Montgomery and Patton had evolved beyond mere personality clashes. It embodied two completely contradictory philosophies about how to wage war. Montgomery subscribes to what he terms the set-piece battle. The approach is systematic. Mass overwhelming force at a single point, achieve total logistical dominance, map out every phase with painstaking detail, then carry it out with surgical precision. Montgomery's military operations are marked by extended preparation phases, enormous artillery barrages, and forward movement that follows strictly according to meticulously crafted schedules. His staff generates operational plans spanning hundreds of pages. His logistics officers calculate ammunition needs right down to each individual round. Every unit receives its specific objective, its designated route, its exact timeline. Nothing gets left to chance because Montgomery views chance as success's greatest adversary. This methodology has proven effective for Montgomery in specific contexts. His triumph at El Alamein was a masterpiece of preparation and concentrated firepower. His Rhine crossing involved the most massive amphibious operation since the D-Day landings, carried out with meticulous planning over several weeks of preparation. When Montgomery has sufficient time, adequate resources, and a well-defined objective, his methods deliver outcomes. However, his approach carries a significant price, time. Montgomery's operations resist acceleration. Any attempt to rush his schedules or push his forces ahead before every logistical element is perfectly aligned contradicts his core principles. And in March 1945, time is precisely what the Allies are running dangerously short on patience for. Patton's philosophy stands in complete opposition at every level. He's convinced that in fluid warfare, velocity and forward momentum outweigh preparation and superior numbers. Patton's operational philosophy gets summed up in his own statement. A decent plan executed with force right now beats a flawless plan executed 7 days from now. His operations are distinguished by lightning-fast movement, aggressive seizing of opportunities, and an acceptance of risk that leaves staff officers from other armies feeling deeply uneasy. Patton's supply chains are frequently stretched to the breaking point. His flanks regularly remain exposed. His units sometimes surge forward so rapidly they lose all communication with command headquarters. But Patton contends that these risks are worth taking because speed itself becomes a weapon that freezes enemy decision-making and generates opportunities that careful preparation could never produce. The expression "counting bullets" surfaces during the Palatinate campaign as a cynical characterization of Montgomery's methodology. While Patton drives his Third Army deep into German-held territory, Montgomery keeps requesting additional ammunition stockpiles before he'll green-light the next operational phase. His requisitions are thorough and precise. This many thousand rounds of 25-pounder artillery shells, this many thousand gallons of petroleum, this many tons of various supplies. The requests make military sense. Montgomery's forces can't function without proper supplies. But from Eisenhower's vantage point, the requests translate into delay. Each day Montgomery dedicates to tallying ammunition is another day the Germans exploit to reorganize, establish fresh defensive positions, and relocate reserves. Eisenhower finds himself caught between two commanders. One demands perfect preparation. The other demands only the green light to advance. The frustration at Supreme Headquarters isn't with Montgomery's competence. He's a capable commander who secured major victories. The frustration centers on the operational pace. By late March, the European war is clearly decided in strategic terms. Germany can't replace its combat losses. Its fuel reserves are completely depleted. Its industrial capacity is being pounded by bombing raids continuously. The question isn't whether Germany will be defeated, but how much longer the war drags on and how many more Allied casualties will accumulate before German capitulation. Within this framework, Montgomery's methodical style feels progressively misaligned with operational reality. The opportunity exists to terminate the war rapidly through aggressive exploitation, but exploitation demands movement, and movement is precisely what Montgomery's philosophy resists. Eisenhower's situation gets complicated by political considerations. Montgomery isn't merely a field commander. He's a national icon in Britain, a personality whose reputation matters for British morale and the Anglo-American partnership. Publicly criticizing Montgomery or seeming to favor Patton at Montgomery's expense generates political complications that Eisenhower can't simply brush aside. But in private, Eisenhower grows increasingly attracted to Patton's methodology. The Supreme Commander perceives the operational landscape clearly. German armies are falling apart. Defensive positions are crumbling. Opportunities for surrounding and capturing massive forces exist along the entire front. But capitalizing on those opportunities demands the kind of aggressive, lightning-fast operations that Patton performs instinctively and that Montgomery regards as irresponsible. This friction between methodical preparation and aggressive exploitation creates the conditions for what unfolds next in the Palatinate. March 13, 1945, Patton's Third Army launches what will become famous as the Palatinate Campaign. The operational concept is characteristically audacious. German forces are defending positions west of the Rhine in considerable strength, working to delay the Allied advance and protect the withdrawal of forces across the river. Conventional military thinking says you pin these forces down with frontal attacks while accumulating overwhelming force for a deliberate breakthrough. Patton disregards conventional thinking. He orders a lightning advance through landscape the Germans believe is impossible for armor, intending to get behind German defensive positions and sever their escape routes across the Rhine. The landscape in the Palatinate doesn't favor armored warfare. The area is marked by rough, undulating terrain with forests, minor rivers, and road systems that benefit the defender. German commanders position their forces anticipating that American attacks will arrive from the west along main highways and that they'll have sufficient time to execute fighting retreats before their withdrawal routes face threats. These expectations rest on sensible assumptions about how mechanized forces function. Armor requires roads. Armor requires supply routes. Armor moves forward methodically, securing ground before pushing ahead. These assumptions have proven accurate throughout most of the European war. Patton is about to prove that assumptions can prove deadly. Third Army's advance doesn't begin with massive artillery preparation, but with pure movement. Armored columns surge forward along multiple routes simultaneously, flowing around resistance rather than halting to eliminate it. When German strong points are discovered, Patton's forces pin them down with minimal troops and keep advancing. The tempo is unrelenting. Units cover 20, 30, sometimes 40 miles in a single day. German commanders receive intelligence of American armor in positions they consider impossible and presume the reports are inflated or incorrect. By the time they grasp that the reports are accurate, American forces are already operating deep behind their lines. The secret to Patton's success isn't superior firepower or better hardware. The secret is tempo. German defensive planning presumes a specific operational pace. Units anticipate holding a position for a day or two, then receiving withdrawal orders to the next defensive line. Supply convoys anticipate having routes available for movement. Headquarters anticipate having time to evaluate situations and issue coordinated directives. Patton's advance operates at a tempo that invalidates all these assumptions. German units get bypassed before they've completed their defensive preparations. Supply convoys get intercepted before they reach their destinations. Headquarters lose contact with forward units because the situation transforms faster than reports can be transmitted and analyzed. By March 20th, just 1 week into the offensive, Third Army has driven over 60 miles into German-controlled territory and is reaching the Rhine at numerous points. More critically, German forces that were defending west of the Rhine are now completely isolated. The roads they required for withdrawal are under American control. The bridges they needed to cross the river are either seized or under American artillery observation and fire. Entire German divisions discover themselves surrounded, incapable of retreating, unable to receive supplies or reinforcements, and confronting the decision of attempting to break through American positions or surrendering. The German First Army and Seventh Army, which started the month as functional fighting formations totaling over 200,000 soldiers, are now fragmented into isolated pockets. Some units try to break out. These breakout attempts prove costly and mostly unsuccessful. American forces have positioned themselves along the roads and river crossings precisely where German forces must pass if they want to escape. The breakout attempts devolve into lopsided engagements where German columns get caught exposed by American armor and artillery. Other units grasping the futility of breaking out, simply cease fighting and await capture. By March 25th, the campaign has effectively concluded. German resistance west of the Rhine has disintegrated. What remains is the administrative challenge of processing tens of thousands of prisoners. The capture of 100,000 German soldiers in a single campaign isn't one discrete event, but a process that develops over 10 days. The process starts with encirclement, progresses through the collapse of German command and control, and culminates in mass surrenders that overwhelm Third Army's prisoner processing capabilities. Grasping how this unfolds requires understanding the German predicament in late March 1945. German units surrounded in the Palatinate aren't defeated in the conventional sense of being destroyed through combat. Many retain near full strength in personnel and equipment. They possess weapons, ammunition, and the training to employ them effectively. What they're missing is hope. By late March, even the most committed German soldiers recognize that the war is finished. The question confronting these soldiers isn't whether Germany will be defeated, but whether they'll survive to witness the conclusion. Surrounded by American forces, severed from supply and communication, these soldiers weigh their options. Fighting their way out means heavy casualties for uncertain results. Surrendering means survival and the conclusion of their war. Increasingly, they select a survival. The surrenders start in small clusters. A platoon emerges from a defensive position, waving white flags. A company commander dispatches an emissary to discuss terms. These initial surrenders get processed through normal procedures. Prisoners get searched, documented, and relocated to rear areas for detention. But by March 23rd, the surrenders are no longer coming in small groups. They're arriving in battalions, regiments, entire divisions. On March 24th, the 6th SS Mountain Division surrenders as a complete unit. Over 15,000 soldiers with their officers, equipment, and unit structure intact. The division simply ceases fighting, stacks its weapons, and awaits American forces to take them into custody. The logistical challenge of processing 100,000 prisoners is overwhelming. Each prisoner requires searching, identification, and documentation. Their weapons must be gathered and secured. They require food, medical attention if wounded, and transportation to prisoner-of-war facilities in rear areas. Third Army's military police units, which are designed to handle modest numbers of prisoners taken during routine combat operations, are completely swamped. Temporary detention areas get established in fields and town squares. German prisoners get organized by their own officers, who receive instructions to maintain order and discipline until American forces can process them appropriately. The columns of German prisoners walking into captivity extend for miles. American soldiers, observing these columns, later describe a surreal atmosphere. These aren't defeated soldiers in the traditional sense. Many are well-equipped, well-fed, physically fit. They're surrendering not because they've been crushed in battle, but because they've been outmaneuvered and recognize no purpose in continuing a war that's already decided. Some American soldiers report that German prisoners appear almost relieved. The burden of fighting a losing war, of constant withdrawal, of witnessing their country being devastated, has been removed. They're prisoners now, which means they're secure. They'll receive food, and their war has ended. Among the prisoners are officers of considerable rank and experience, division commanders who led formations through campaigns in France, Russia, and North Africa. staff officers who designed operations and managed logistics. These officers, when questioned, express a consistent theme. They were defeated not by American firepower, but by American velocity. They describe being unable to establish defensive positions because American forces arrived before positions could be prepared. They describe losing contact with subordinate units because headquarters were being overrun faster than replacement headquarters could be established. They describe being bypassed, encircled, and isolated before they fully grasped where American forces were positioned or what their objectives were. In their professional evaluations, they were defeated by operational tempo they couldn't counter. March 25, 1945. The report reaches Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force in Reims, France. The report originates from 3rd Army Headquarters, signed by Patton's Chief of Staff, and its contents are almost impossible to believe. Total German prisoners captured during the Palatinate campaign, 98,000, with additional captures still being tallied. Projected final total exceeds 100,000. The report contains supporting documentation, prisoner processing records, intelligence evaluations, unit reports. Eisenhower's staff verifies the figures meticulously because they're so extraordinary. The verification confirms it. Patton has captured more prisoners in 2 weeks than some Allied armies have captured across months. Eisenhower's immediate response, according to staff officers present, is professional satisfaction blended with personal astonishment. The professional satisfaction is evident. This victory dramatically accelerates the war's conclusion. 100,000 German soldiers removed from combat means 100,000 soldiers who won't defend the Rhine, won't challenge the advance into Germany's interior, won't inflict casualties on Allied forces. The capture carries strategic significance in ways that transcend the numbers. It proves that German resistance is collapsing, that large-scale surrenders are achievable, that aggressive operations can accomplish results that methodical approaches cannot. But the personal astonishment reflects something more profound. Eisenhower has collaborated with Patton for years. He understands Patton's strengths: aggressive command, tactical genius, capacity to motivate soldiers. He also recognizes Patton's weaknesses: political clumsiness, impulsive choices, readiness to accept risks that sometimes approach recklessness. Throughout the war, Eisenhower has defended Patton against critics demanding his removal, maintaining that Patton's combat effectiveness outweighs his personal shortcomings. But even Eisenhower, who comprehends Patton's abilities better than virtually anyone, is stunned by the magnitude of this achievement. Capturing 100,000 prisoners isn't merely effective command. It represents operational excellence of the highest caliber. The political dimension can't be dismissed. Montgomery is conducting operations north of 3rd Army sector. His forces are also making headway, also taking prisoners, also advancing toward the Rhine and beyond. But Montgomery's operations are advancing methodically with thorough preparation and plentiful supplies. His prisoner counts, while noteworthy, are measured in thousands, not 100,000s. The contrast is impossible to ignore and politically awkward. British public sentiment expects Montgomery to feature prominently in the war's final campaigns. British political leadership expects their forces to perform a major role in Germany's defeat. But the statistics from the Palatinate indicate that the decisive operations are unfolding in Patton's sector, not Montgomery's. Eisenhower confronts a delicate challenge. He must recognize Patton's achievement without seeming to diminish Montgomery's accomplishments. He must balance American and British pride, must preserve coalition cohesion, must prevent the kind of inter-allied competition that could undermine the war effort even at this advanced stage. His public remarks about the Palatinate campaign are carefully crafted. He commends Third Army's achievement while also acknowledging the contributions of other Allied forces. He stresses that victory results from coordinated Allied effort, not the accomplishment of any individual commander. But privately, Eisenhower grasps what the Palatinate campaign has demonstrated, that Patton's approach, aggressive, high-tempo operations that prioritize velocity over preparation, can achieve outcomes that methodical approaches cannot duplicate. The understanding influences Eisenhower's decisions in the war's closing weeks. When planning subsequent operations, he gives Third Army priority for supplies and authorization to maintain aggressive advances. When Montgomery requests additional time and resources, Eisenhower's patience grows thinner. The success in the Palatinate has proven what becomes possible when operational tempo gets maximized, and Eisenhower is committed to sustaining that tempo until German surrender. The 100,000 prisoners represent more than just a battlefield triumph. They're validation of a warfare approach that Eisenhower now embraces completely. The capture of 100,000 German prisoners in the Palatinate campaign becomes, in hindsight, one of the defining moments of the European war's concluding phase, not because it was the largest engagement or produced the most casualties or represented the most dramatic moment, but because it crystallized a reality that military historians would analyze for decades, that in the context of Germany's collapse in 1945, speed and aggression proved more decisive than firepower and preparation. The immediate effect on German morale can't be overstated. German soldiers and officers throughout the front learned what transpired in the Palatinate. An entire army group surrounded and captured in days, not annihilated through extended battle, but simply outmaneuvered and bypassed. The psychological impact was crushing. If 100,000 soldiers could be captured so rapidly, what chance did any German unit have of mounting effective resistance? The surrenders in the Palatinate encouraged surrenders across other sectors. German commanders facing American advances started calculating not whether to fight, but whether fighting accomplished any purpose when the outcome appeared predetermined. The strategic consequences were equally profound. Germany's capacity to defend its territory depends on having soldiers to occupy defensive lines. Every soldier captured is a soldier who can't defend the next river, the next city, the next ridge. 100,000 prisoners removed from the German order of battle is equivalent to eliminating multiple divisions from German defensive strength. The loss hastened Germany's military disintegration and shortened the war by weeks, possibly months. In a war where every week meant thousands of additional casualties and continued devastation of German cities, shortening the timeline was strategically critical for Allied leadership. The Palatinate campaign validated operational concepts that would shape military doctrine for generations. The campaign proved that mobility and velocity could replace overwhelming force, that aggressive exploitation could accomplish results that methodical operations couldn't, that accepting tactical risk could yield strategic advantage. These lessons influenced how Allied forces operated in the war's final weeks and shaped post-war thinking about armored operations, combined arms warfare, and the significance of operational tempo. The personal vindication for Patton was absolute. He'd faced criticism throughout the war for recklessness, for insubordination, for political tone deafness. His slapping incidents, his public remarks, his conflicts with superiors had repeatedly endangered his career. Eisenhower had shielded him, advocated for him, defended him against those demanding his relief. The Palatinate campaign validated Eisenhower's judgment completely. Patton's methods, however unorthodox, generated results that justified every controversy, every challenging decision to retain him in command. The 100,000 prisoners weren't merely a battlefield accomplishment. They were validation of a command philosophy that prioritized action over caution, movement over consolidation, and bold risk-taking over careful preparation. History recalls Patton as the general who completed the mission. While Montgomery was organizing his next set-piece battle, while other commanders were consolidating positions and awaiting supplies, Patton was capturing entire German armies. The image of those miles-long columns of German prisoners walking into captivity became emblematic of the war's conclusion, not the dramatic final stand, not the climactic engagement, but the quiet capitulation of forces that had been outmaneuvered and recognized no purpose in further resistance. Patton didn't annihilate the German armies in the Palatinate. He rendered them irrelevant through speed they couldn't match and operational tempo they couldn't counter. When German commanders were questioned after the war about what defeated them, many pointed not to Allied firepower or resources, but to the velocity of operations that gave them no time to respond, no opportunity to prepare defenses, no chance to execute the kind of fighting withdrawal that might have extended the war. They were defeated by movement, and the master of movement was George Patton, the general who captured 100,000 soldiers while his rival was still tallying bullets.